It's 2006. I'm attending a talk by Isabel Aguilera, Managing Director of Google Spain and Portugal. She says that at Google they knew who was going to win the elections for the presidency of Real Madrid Football Club. All of us in the audience assumed that she was talking about using the search volume for each of the candidates to forecast the result. It's 2008. The world is paying attention to the United States presidential election, and I plan to do something that nobody has done yet, predicting the results using Twitter data. It doesn't go well. According to the data I collect, Obama is going to win everywhere, including Texas, so I put my research into a drawer. It's 2010. Two papers appear claiming that predicting future events using social media, even including elections, is not only feasible but easy. So I enter the someone is wrong on the internet mode, and I decide to dissect my failed research to better understand the purported power of social media data, or rather its lack of it. It's 2010. I publish a couple of papers, both alone and in co-authorship, showing that predicting elections with social media data is not just a bad idea, it simply doesn't work. So my metamorphosis into the Gemini cricket against using social media data to extract public opinion is complete. It's 2013. I'm invited to contribute a book chapter on the pitfalls of using social media data to analyze political opinion. It's 2015. I'm invited to contribute a column on the role that social media can play to impulse participation and democratization. And I'm invited to speak at a TEDx event about the very same topic. I agree, but with a warning. I'm highly skeptical of social media living up to such expectations. It's 2021. I'm invited to speak at INAC and talk about whether social media is helping or hindering democracy. And at this moment, you may want to lower a bit the volume because some punk rock is going to play, or you may want to raise it and let your neighbors know that you are attending a really great conference. So let's rock a little bit.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue for me and you. And I say to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, bright sunny days, dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. So pretty in the skies are also on the faces of people walking by. I see friends shaking hands, say, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I see babies cry while I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever knew, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I say to myself,
Okay, I must confess that this video is exactly the same I used in 2015. What can I say? I am a great fan of reusing my own past work, and besides, it serves well to set the mood for my speech. I mean, if you were waiting for a happy-go-lucky speech meandering through several problems to eventually reach some upbeat ending, just forget it. I'm skeptical about widely held points of view regarding the impact, either positive or negative, of social media, a disbeliever on social media companies being able to self-regulate, very worried about the way future laws to supervise social media can backfire, and pessimistic about many other issues affecting our democracies, which are compounded when mixed with social media. I have just one hope, which I aim to eventually transmit: the many amazing researchers working on this pressing but very hard topic, that with any luck will not be as pessimistic as me. Having set the tone of the speech, let's go back to the contents of the video. It goes through the Iranian Green Movement, the Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia, the Egyptian Revolution of 2011, the 15M movement in Spain, the Gezi Park protests in Turkey, the Umbrella movement in Hong Kong, and Occupy Wall Street. When those events were taking place from 2009 to 2014, many pundits claimed that social media should not only be acknowledged for the protests to happen, but that it was going to bring change, even become a tipping point towards democratization across the globe. As you may guess, my heavy use of pictures of riot police wanted to make clear my point, that the claims about the democratizing power of social media had been greatly exaggerated. Of course, now in 2021, believing that social media was to improve democracy seems a naive perspective. Who could have been that gullible? In fact, almost everybody. For instance, in 2009, it was widely reported that the US Department of State had requested Twitter to postpone a planned temporary shutdown to not disrupt the Iranian protests, which supposedly were highly dependent on the Twitter platform. Mark Feifel, a former aide of George W. Bush, went even further when he suggested that Twitter deserved the Nobel Peace Prize because of its purported role in those protests. And in 2012, Colin Powell said this about social media: "You can stop it, Vladimir Putin can stop it, and the Middle East leaders can stop it. Social media is taught to youth and cannot be slowed down. It can help bring democracy." Almost a decade has passed since the eruption of all those so-called Twitter and Facebook revolutions, and it's rather clear that social media is not going to make authoritarian regimes crumble and catalyze democratic changes. What's more, opinion has moved like a pendulum from the hype about social media bringing democracy across the world to a moral panic about the imminent destruction of democracy at the hands of social media. Indeed, that's the main topic of this conference: is social media helping or hindering democracy? It's not easy to provide an answer for that question, and therefore I will draw upon different perspectives, namely those of the press, pundits, politicians, social media companies, and finally some prominent experts on the field. Of course, I'm not providing an exhaustive survey, just a summary so you can appreciate each point of view and the subtleties of the debate. I'm starting with the press for two reasons. First, it keeps the public informed so they can make thoughtful decisions. And second, it acts as a watchdog of the powerful. The following are fairly typical examples of the headlines we usually find when getting news about social media. Signs of Russia meddling in Brexit referendum. Inside the hate factory, how Facebook fuels far-right profit. Cambridge Analytica leak shows global manipulation is out of control. Facebook executives shut down efforts to make the site less divisive. Russian disinformation operation relied on forgeries, fake posts on 300 platforms. Facebook struggles to balance civility and growth. Facebook stopped employees from reading an internal report about its role in the insurrection. We can have Facebook or democracy, not both. Social media making political polarization worse. Facebook is a harmful presence in our lives. It's not too late to pull the plug on it. I don't know if those headlines are hyperventilation or plain clickbait. I will leave that for you to decide. What is clear is that they are quite scary. Needless to say, even when the press makes the news, it does not produce them from thin air. They resort to different sources, and on this topic, pundits are in high demand. They provide not only just-in-time expertise, but they understand the needs of mass media, and therefore they get to the point and provide information in accessible ways, even though sometimes they may lose some of the nuances on the way. Actually, when talking about social media and democracy, some of the pundits put it up to 11. For instance, you probably have watched the TEDx talk by Lawrence Lessig from Harvard University on literally how the net destroyed democracy. Or the TED talk by Yael Eisenstadt, former CIA officer, national security advisor and diplomat, turned into democracy activist who claims that Facebook is breaking democracy. And then we have my favorite kind of pundit, the prodigal tech pro. They are usually former executives of tech companies that, after quitting their very lucrative jobs, realize the many harms they help to produce and feel the urge to get it off their chests with the press or by delivering talks. Take, for instance, Chamath Palihapitiya, former vice president for user growth at Facebook, who feels tremendous guilt and thinks that they created tools that are destroying how society works with no civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, and mistruth. The main tenet from this kind of claims from pundits is that sometime in the past, well before social media, the web and the internet came to pollute everything, people were engaging in civil and sensible debate on matters they disagree, but without the fragmentation, polarization, and rage we are witnessing now because of social media. See? Very civil and very sensible debates of the past without social media spoiling the discussion. By the way, that's sarcasm. So, the pundits and the press have sounded the alarms. The tide has turned. Social media is no more a force for democratization. Actually, social media has never been a force for democratization. Social media is the scourge and sorrow of democracy. And therefore, politicians are now deeply, extremely, seriously, and strongly concerned about the many shortcomings of social media and the perils it supposes for our democracies. For instance, shortly after the United States Capitol attack, the French President Emmanuel Macron called for the regulation of social platforms to avoid further threats to democracy. And the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, argued that we need to contain the immense power and far-reaching impact of social platforms on democracies. Such statements perfectly align with the Digital Service Act, a law proposal by the European Commission which, among other things, aims to regulate how social media companies should respond to disinformation and intentional manipulation taking place on their platforms, or with the Justice Against Malicious Algorithms Act of 2021, recently introduced in the United States House of Representatives and which tries to address similar concerns. An important issue of these kind of laws is that they address social media in such a broad way that they will probably cause additional harm. For instance, regarding freedom of speech, or by making media platforms to overreact and remove harmless content that has been wrongly flagged as harmful. On top of that, we cannot forget that social media platforms operate globally. This means that rules which are the product of regulation in the United States and the European Union will be applied in a one-size-fits-all manner to countries with very different issues in their interaction between politics and social media, producing unpredictable but probably unpleasant results. Of course, social media companies respectfully disagree on their presumed role as destroyers of democracy. Indeed, during the last years, we have gotten used to a loop of bad news followed by press statements from the companies, even testimony in front of elected representatives, claiming that we do not fully understand neither the problem nor the solutions they are deploying to solve it. For the purpose of illustration, let's take the docudrama The Social Dilemma. I'm not endorsing this film in any way, but it is a useful example because it helped to make some social media issues better known to the broad public, and it triggered a response from Facebook. Facebook said the following: "We should have conversations about the impact of social media on our lives, but the film varies the substance in sensationalism. It gives a distorted view to create a scapegoat for difficult and complex societal problems. They do not include insights from those currently working at the companies or any experts that take a different view. They don't acknowledge the efforts already taken by the companies, and instead they rely on commentary from those who haven't been on the inside for many years." These and similar statements from social media companies can be summarized into something like this. Look, the problems we are tackling with are much more complex than you really know, and we are doing our best effort to solve them. Unfortunately, we cannot show you the data that could help you to understand the issues, because the privacy of our users is very important to us. And we cannot explain to you the nature of our solutions or how we know those solutions are really working, because they are trade secrets. So you have no choice other than trust us. Can you see the problem here? We're discussing how social media is impacting democracy and the efforts that social media companies should take in order to reduce the harm they may be causing. And that discussion is, as Benoit Blanc would say, a donut with a hole in the middle. And the hole is the issue of transparency. Nobody, except for a few of those inside social media companies, have access to the data and the means to fully analyze it, to understand the different problems and determine if the deployed solutions are improving or worsening those problems. In contrast, outside, independent researchers are constantly facing barriers to conduct their work. Just two recent examples. This summer, Facebook blocked a team from New York University which was studying political ads and COVID, and closely after that, Facebook admitted that data provided to selected misinformation researchers was incomplete. Oops! So the conclusions of many years of research were called into question. So, the most critical demand for social media companies, and one our representatives must press for, is to be transparent. That is, to provide full access to both data and algorithmic solutions to independent outside researchers, so they can understand the nature and extent of the problems and the fitness of the solutions, so they can later inform both lawmakers and the public. Who could be those independent outside researchers? After all, up to this point, my speech has been an exercise on losing friends and alienating people, I've mocked the simplistic views of the press, pundits and politicians, and I've doubted the sincerity of social media companies. So you may wonder if I find anyone worthy to conduct the research society really needs. Truth is, I do. Actually, there are plenty of experts on the topic. Experts that, when everybody was praising social media as champions of democracy, warned us that such a thing was far from the truth. And now that everybody is scapegoating social media for all of the ailments of our democracy, they are pointing out that even though social media has a share of responsibility, there are many other reasons for the democratic backsliding we are witnessing. It goes without saying that there are so many amazing people researching the intersection between social media and politics that I cannot mention all of them. To all those researchers out there not appearing in the next 2 slides, you are breathtaking. Please keep on your hard work because we really need it. That said, I want to suggest to you a few selected persons whose work I wholeheartedly recommend you to follow very closely. And I also have a few books for you to read. What can be distilled from more than a decade of research on the interaction between social media and politics? In short, if anything is destroying democracy, it's not social media. In any case, it would be us using social media. Although unintentional, social media has been turned from a tool into a weapon because most of the features of commercial social media have ended up being harmful in the political arena through misuse and abuse. The ease to share any kind of content, the fight for attention, and the constant chase for engagement have made it easier to share misinformation, increase the level of noise and confusion, and escalate rage and mistrust in a large fraction of the user base, and thus among citizens. Now, I know that I told you from the beginning that you shouldn't expect a happily ever after ending. However, I want to quote Benjamin Barber for you to harbor some hope. Barber said, "The trouble with the zealots of technology as an instrument of democratic liberation is not that they misconceive technology, but they fail to understand democracy. Technology can help democracy, but only if programmed to do so. Left to the market, it is likely only to reproduce the vices of politics as usual." My reading of Barber with our current situation is this. In the long term, the best solution to the harm caused by social media companies is not trying to fix them, but just quitting the walled gardens and instead rely on open, free and distributed platforms which do not try to monetize attention-seeking and engagement. In the meantime, we need lawmakers to force social media companies to fully disclose the data and algorithms to trusted outside researchers so all stakeholders can understand the different issues, the ways in which they can be tackled with, and more importantly, all of us, through our representatives, have a saying in how social media companies must respond. And that's a wrap.